The new Star Wars movies have been polarizing to say the least, but I must say one thing emerged from what has now been sarcastically called the fandom menace that I did not expect as a result. Defense of the Star Wars prequels! To hear some people who despise the new films talk, you would think that episodes 1 through 3, released at the turn of the century, were actually good and everyone always believed that. Do these people not remember a time when those films received scathing comments from both critics and fans? To say nothing of when said fans got hold of a camera and the internet and became critics themselves? I admit to being one who fully agrees with people like Confused Matthew and Plinkett with their scathing deconstructions of the prequel films. Especially Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, and how it more than anything was responsible, be it from George Lucas's direction or Hayden Christensen's acting, for portraying Luke Skywalker's father Anakin as being the exact opposite of the good-natured, noble, idealistic Jedi that Obi-Wan Kenobi said he was, completely undoing the idea that his turn to the dark side was a tragic event that no one could have ever seen coming. However, some friends and viewers of mine have countered my criticisms, especially when they come to Anakin, by saying if I wanted to see that portrayal of Anakin as he was told to be, I needed to watch the animated TV series of Star Wars that took place during the legendary Clone Wars themselves. I do have a rebuttal of my own as to why this actually doesn't help defend against my issues with the prequels, but we'll get to that down the line. For now, you begged me to watch, so let's do this. The Star Wars animated series, Clone Wars. Ain't I a stinker? You were probably all thinking I was talking about the animated series that ran on Cartoon Network starting in 2008, right? But why would I go for the obvious when I can swerve you all with the obscure? Because yes indeed, there actually was a Clone Wars animated series that came out 5 years before the one everyone remembers. And on the same network as well. The first Star Wars TV series made ever since the Ewoks and Droids shows, the series premiered on CN in 2003, 2 years before Revenge of the Sith was released. It was developed by Genndy Tartakovsky, though it may not be fair to call it a series of episodes as much as a series of shorts, and aired just prior to Cartoon Network's Friday night programming block, along with being released at the same time on the network's website. The lack of length in the episodes probably contributes to why Disney ultimately declared this series to not be canon shortly after their purchase of Lucasfilm. I suppose they had to declare one series in continuity and the other not, and the one that got more than 100 full half-hour episodes was going to win out. But let's take a look at the first Clone Wars series anyway and see for ourselves if the mouse-eared regime made the right choice. I should note that the footage I found was from someone who appears to have taken all of the shorts and re-edited them all together in order to make one nearly 2-hour full-length movie. How this affected what the shorts were like in their original run, I can't say. The series begins with Yoda riding Tauntaun back, brandishing a lightsaber, leading an entire army of Jedi and clone soldiers against an army of droids. They are really going for the fanboy orgasm overload right from the start. The only thing missing is a John Williams revision of Ride of the Valkyries. We get exposition from Master Yoda on how the Clone Wars spread across the galaxy and more planets and systems are aligning with the Separatists under Count Dracula, and hinting that the Republic's lone hope for victory lies in the one destined to be the greatest Jedi ever, Anakin Skywalker. Obi-Wan offers to lead an assault against the droid manufacturing plants of the banking clan, and we get Obi-Wan's reluctance to let Anakin lead the Space Forces, citing his uncertainty that Anakin is ready for such responsibility, Anakin pouting and insisting that he is ready, and Chancellor Panda Bear agreeing with Anakin and making the final decision. It's just like the movies. Really, this is where I will give Genndy a ton of credit, especially with the animation. Look, he made Anakin and Princess Uba Duba just as expressionless as they were in the films. Maybe even more. Okay, I got it out of my system. I will hold back on referencing any more confused Matthew joke names of these characters. Maybe. So Anakin commands the space troops while Obi-Wan leads the ground assault on the city of Townsville, where we get a ton of shooting and blowing stuff up with very little dialogue. And I can't help but wonder if this was a symbolic gesture to represent how even during the Clone Wars, these predecessors to the Stormtroopers were silent no-names that are sadly forgotten in times of war, or if it's just because Warner really wanted to skimp on voice acting talent. I'm guessing the answer is yes. The Red Leader here often acts less like a clone and more like a certain smuggler we're destined to meet one day. Meanwhile, Yoda sends another force to aid the people of Mon Calamari, must-resist joke about military interference. And these forces are led by Master Fisto, who looks like if Aquaman swam too long in the polluted Lake Wanawheat from Kim Possible. And yes, in this battle, we have clones that are able to fight underwater, submarine TIE fighters, and separatist ships that look like manta rays. And you know what? I'm cool with this. For all the butt whining you hear online about how sacred the Star Wars franchise was ruined by the Mouse-eared Empire, so many forget. Star Wars was always silly when you get down to the bare bones of it. And this scene perfectly encapsulates it. This is taking what you can do in the realm of science fantasy and completely run with it. Not to mention, Fisto is a freaking badass. He is the Star Wars version of Aquaman. He cuts the manta ships into pieces with his lightsaber and is able to use the Force to redirect their torpedoes. And then when the Separatists break out their own mini underwater Death Star, he just disables it with a giant air bubble with the force of a blitzball. Screw The Mandalorian, I want a series about this guy. Son of a nerf herder! Actually, given how many times in this series the Jedi are shown being able to leap tall buildings in a single bound, and able to use the Force to just blow away entire legions of the Separatist best troops, what's so special about Anakin again? Speaking of, we learn that he has a new adversary, as Dooku takes on an apprentice, and Darth Sidious instructs the apprentice to kill Anakin. Wait, what? Okay, even though this series came out before Revenge of the Sith, anyone with the brain of a womp rat knew that Sidious was Palpatine, who is grooming Anakin to become his eventual apprentice in the Sith, but now he's sending out an assassin after Anakin?
It matters not. She is merely an instrument to bring forth the eradication of the Jedi.
Really, was David Xanatos a Sith in a previous life? Meanwhile, the ground battle goes from something out of Star Wars to some cross between Star Wars, Mad Max, and First Knight. Oh, and the Separatists have this thing that makes me think the episode was made by Rob Liefeld. Really, this is the Star Wars version of Deadpool. It regenerates from just about everything, and it's so powerful, it takes Obi-Wan getting eaten and destroying it from the inside. And this happens at the end of the first season. And sadly, after all that crazy awesome, we start the second season with him. After Anakin takes out almost all of the enemy fighters by himself. Seriously, you ever hear someone complain about Rey being a Mary Sue? Show them this scene. And when he can't take out this last one, he defies orders and chases after it on his own. All while continuing to make that just stupid, grimacing look that you just want to punch. This whole scene just makes me hate Anakin even more, and I'm still wondering if that was Tartakovsky's intent from the beginning. Though, yeah, I guess I can't be too critical of how they portray Anakin, because the next episode is all about Mace Windu taking out an entire army of droids by himself. The whole series is showing the Jedi as if they were hopped up on steroids and Jolt Cola. Which brings us to the other issue. The series almost runs like a soap opera in that it has multiple plots running at the same time. At least in this case, it does focus several episodes consecutively on one plot solely, rather than cutting in and out between them all. We get this one where Yoda has to rescue Jedi on the planet where I think the crystals that power lightsabers come from, before we then get back to Anakin tracking down the fighter to Dagobah? Who knows? And it turns out the one that led him here is guess who? We get a fight that's somehow more gratuitous than his future one on Mustafar that ultimately ends like this. Wow! So much symbolism that Film Brain's head would explode. Following an episode with a Wolfman Jedi, yes, I said a Wolfman Jedi, Anakin returns only for him and Obi-Wan to discover the remaining Jedi Council are currently at the mercy of General Grievous. Again, this came out before Revenge of the Sith, so if there's any doubt it was meant to be in canon, this should eliminate it. Season 3, I think, begins with Red Leader having painted up his squadron ship like it's a World War II bomber. Yeah, now we're really getting into Mad Max territory. Anyway, this season reportedly aired in March of 2005. 2 months before episode 3 was released, so it clearly was meant to be the final bridge into that film, as it actually ends with General Grievous taking Palpatine prisoner, setting up the opening of that third movie. Before that, the season opens with the Jedi declaring they need more knights to counter the force of Grievous, and Obi-Wan suggests that Anakin be automatically promoted to Jedi Knight. Okay, what the hell? Last season, you were against him even commanding a fleet of starfighters. He proved you to be right in those doubts by breaking orders and flying into an obvious trap. And now you think he should already become a Jedi Knight? Well, it's the first reckless thing I've seen Obi-Wan do, so at least this is the first thing in the prequels that might actually fit with the original trilogy's narrative.
They'll need an army of Jedi.
I have a visual.
Jedi?
I think so.
How many?
It's gonna be one.
No.
80?
It's gonna be one.
What? 50?
It's gonna be one. It's gonna be one. It's gonna be one.
2.
What?
Okay, didn't see that coming. So anyway, much of the third season is a montage of Anakin and Obi-Wan kicking ass together. Well, mostly Anakin. And supposedly showing where that true friendship that Obi-Wan told of in the first trilogy really grew. Along with Anakin facing the final test needed to become a true Jedi before he and Obi-Wan learn of Palpatine's capture in the end. Again, this is the #1 reason people said I needed to watch either of the animated series on the Clone Wars. To see the character development between Obi-Wan and Anakin that validates Obi-Wan's eventual claims to Luke that his father was indeed a good person, a noble Jedi Knight, and a true friend. As I've pointed out, even if this cartoon is not considered canon today, it certainly was meant to be in continuity at the time it was made. And I have been told that similar character development did occur in the second series. So with that having been said, does this series help me to see the prequels in a new light? First of all, it just comes out of nowhere. We don't see any incident that justifies how Obi-Wan seemingly changes his mind on Anakin and gains enough trust in him to feel he's ready to become a Jedi. But even if it didn't, even if we got much clearer character development, it still doesn't solve the biggest problem that I, and I think many other people, have with the prequel series as a whole. All of these plot elements that help strengthen the claims from the original trilogy of who Luke Skywalker's father was before becoming Darth Vader happen in stories that are supplementary to the main film series when they should have been in those movies. This type of banter between Obi-Wan and Anakin, the confidence without arrogance we eventually get from Anakin in these episodes, this is what we should have seen in the Attack of the Clones movie. Not Hayden Christensen being all emo and whining about how demanding and unfair Obi-Wan is to him and how he's holding him back. Not him suggesting that democracy doesn't work and that people should be forced to go along with his ideas. And definitely not someone who committed mass murder of innocent sand people out of the rage from the one that killed his mother. That, to me, was the point of no return when Anakin was committed to the dark side, and presenting him as a good guy after that, sorry guys, too little, too late. Therein lies the ultimate problem with either Clone Wars series. It's like they had to be created to try and fix the problems from the actual theatrical presentation. In this one's case, Genndy Tartakovsky was essentially asked to do what George Lucas somehow couldn't do with his own creation. The 2003 Star Wars Clone Wars series is just all over the place. The first 2 seasons go completely over the top, making the Jedi look like superheroes. I know I said earlier that Star Wars has always been silly in some way, but here they just completely push the boundaries to almost come off like an 8-year-old's fan fiction. The 3rd season definitely looks like a Lucas mandate to directly tie into the 3rd movie, which would be okay because the basic story could work as an addition that still wasn't essential to understand the next film, except that they had to shoehorn in the character development, which we should have seen in the previous film. If anything, I am curious to see how much more the 2nd series expands on this, and if that justifies Disney choosing to run it as canon over this first one, and if it justifies Disney's decision to make it canon. But regardless, the 2003 series does come off as a cheap, rushed attempt to try and fix the issues that would not have existed had George Lucas been a better writer and director on the actual movies that he had complete control over. The fact that another team had to come together to try and fix Lucas's plot holes should only drive home further that the success of Star Wars was always a team effort, requiring the love and work of many people to make something good. And to me, that has been reflected in what Disney has produced with Lucasfilm ever since. The storytelling, the character development, it's all been back and much better than it was in the prequels. And that's why a lot of us do look forward, not just to the rise of Skywalker, but to what may also come from Star Wars in the future, regardless of what the fandom menace spreads online. May the Force be with you all, and we'll see you next year on TV Trash.